Hi, fans of high quality entertainment. I am with Phil Aston from Now Spinning Magazine. I've talked to him in the past once, had an interview with him. And this is a little different because I'm going to be interviewing Phil, and then Phil's going to be interviewing me about some band called Sparks. I don't know if anybody's heard of them, but I'm looking forward to that. So today's topic is in the 70s, I don't think we always got Top of the Pops here in Canada, but at some point it showed up, maybe in the late 70s, early 80s. And, I'm not all positive about it uh, at the time.
Yeah,
Bands
yeah,
like,
yeah.
especially a band like Slade, I just, that Dave Hill, he drove me up a wall, with his crazy outfits and all that. It just, I don't know. At the time, it was like, these guys are idiots. I didn't even, the music was okay, right? At the
Uh-huh,
time.
uh-huh,
But later on, and bands like Sweet too,
uh-huh.
but it was later on, with YouTube and all that, I would check out live, when they would actually be playing live. That's one thing I didn't like was the lip syncing, but I mean, every band almost
Yeah.
every band did it, right? And when I would see actual live performances of Sweet and Slade, I had a serious respect for them. It's like they were good, right? And so Top of the Pops started in 1964. What's your first memories of?
Well, my first memories are the early 70s.
Yeah,
You've got to go back to that point, and I think me and you are roughly the same age, if just separate by a few months, probably.
I'm
Um,
42, Phil.
yeah, me as well. Um, it's good to be 42.
Yeah,
Is that obviously there's no internet for you youngsters watching this, and so there was nothing like that. There was no YouTube, and obviously, and there was no real way of watching music on the TV. So what we did have, we had music newspapers. So grown-ups who wanted to read about politics would read a newspaper, but once a week on a Wednesday in the UK, we had New Musical Express, Record Mirror, Sounds, and Melody Maker. We had a choice of all these music newspapers. So music was huge.
yeah,
There was nothing else to distract us. There was no computer games or anything. There was football or music. And so we could read about what was going on in the world of pop. We had Radio 1 where we could hear it, but the only opportunity we had to see music played live, these pop stars, was Top of the Pops.
yeah.
There was another program called the Ogre Whistle Test, but that was on much later and I wasn't allowed to stay up. So it was top of the Pops. And a lot of the bands that were around in the early 70s, they released singles one after the other. A bit like now with a lot of modern pop where albums are seen as bit kind of passe and everyone releases
Yeah.
tracks. The early 70s was tracks, singles. And I knew, Larry, when you were asking me this, what were going to be my most iconic moments or what
Yeah.
bands did I think about Top of the Pops? I think as much as I tried to think Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights, got to be that one.
Yeah.
Um, or Queen, it's got to be that one. Whatever. But it it has to go back to earlier, really, because by the time Kate Bush had appeared, she was appearing on TV and other things.
Yeah.
So the golden age of Top of the Pops for me is really when it was like Slade, Sweet, T-Rex, Mock the
Yeah.
Hoople, Sparks, ELO. It was, and the fact that these bands would come round on a really regular basis to be on Top of the Pops with a yet another track.
Yeah.
Uh, that was what, I mean, Slade were releasing single after single, but I think when they did release an album, Sladist, that was really a compilation in
Yeah.
many respects.
Yeah. And what did you think at the time of, like, of Dave Hill in his get-ups? Did you just
Well, in the UK, my barometer of taste was my dad.
yeah.
He'd be standing in the kind of doorway of the kitchen doing the kind of drying up from the what we'd ever had for tea,
Yeah.
and his reaction would dictate whether I thought it was this was what I knew to be focusing on.
Yeah.
So if
And it
he came
wasn't
in,
really the music, right? It was more what they looked like.
yeah, my dad would say, you know, he looks like a girl, or you know, he'll never get a real job looking like that. And I think, but that is a real job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a pop star. Um, I think because this was the golden age of, I'm talking about the golden age of glam rock in a way, and very different to what happened in the mid 80s with all the American, you know, heavy metal bands and everything, where they did look incredibly feminine and all the rest of it. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the bands in the UK early 70s looked like builders wearing makeup, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that was the kind of Slade thing, was they looked like blokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dave Hill, I mean, what did Dave Hill said? Because it was Noddy Holder and Jimmy Lee wrote the songs. He said, "You write them and I'll sell them." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. That's
I
good.
think that was Dave Hill's job,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
to sell them. And he
Yeah.
was completely over the top, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely
Yeah.
over the top.
But like I said, seeing them later on, he's actually a very good guitarist, right?
He is.
Like, but
He
it
is.
was just back then, all the lip syncing. I was thinking, oh, they probably can't even play their instruments, right? It's
Yeah, well, there was a lot of that about.
yeah, yeah,
But I think that I can't remember what the exact musicians' union rules were over in the UK, but it was something that it was whether the vocals are live or the music had to be live. But there was something the way they mimed. I mean, some of the famous ones which are really badly mimed is Rod Stewart doing Maggie May, where I don't think he's even trying.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that was a great performance because I remember it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So were there certain artists? So is that the way you would become a fan of a lot of bands?
Yeah, yeah.
Just the Top of the Pops?
It would be whatever it was, whatever was going on, whatever homework I had to do, whatever you done at school. Everyone in my class and everyone in my peer group went watched Top of the Pops, uh, and and then the next day in the playground, you would talk about what you'd seen on Top of the Pops.
Yeah,
And obviously, this is a weekly program, but there are some specific moments which I can remember because it was everybody talked about it. You know, it might be, well, I mean, one of them, we're going to talk about this in another show, but This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us by Sparks.
yeah,
That was a major talking point the next day at school.
yeah,
Everyone was talking about that because
yeah.
no one had seen anything like it. They were so unusual. I mean, the 70s was full of unusual acts,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah,
they managed to look more unusual than a lot of the unusual acts.
yeah,
And it was obviously had a great little riff and everything. And people didn't really know, me, didn't really know how to categorize them, you know, because then it was just, there was no talk about, are they a pop band? Is this glam rock? It was just like, did you see Top of the Pops? Did you see Sparks? I think there was a kind of innocence to it that you didn't put things in, this is rock. In fact, we're talking about, we just mentioned glam rock. I don't think even then, back then, when I was like 14 to 16, we used the phrase glam rock. It was just the music on Top of the Pops.
yeah, yeah.
You know, was Slade a rock band? Not Slade, Sweet, for instance. Their B-sides were like, they wanted to be Deep Purple, but their A-sides were Chin and Chapman
Yeah,
super hits, really.
yeah, yeah. And even Black Sabbath, right? They appeared, I
Yeah.
think, in 1978. Was that kind of a surprise for you?
That was a surprise. I remember that, although I didn't see it at the time because I'd gone out and I couldn't understand why the pub was empty. And then everyone arrived and they said, "Phil, Black Sabbath are on Top of the Pops." And I was going, "Why were they?" And because obviously Never Say Die come out, and
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't a massive selling hit, so they must have pulled some strings somewhere and got on the show.
yeah,
But that was a moment.
yeah,
But moments were like All the Young Dudes by Mott the Hoople.
yeah.
You know, seeing that for the first time.
David Bowie, of course.
David Bowie, Starman, and Gene Genie. ELO seemed to be always on there, but not. If we talk about ELO, we can't talk about ELO without mentioning Wizard,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and the Move, because it
Yeah.
seemed like that family of Roy Wood.
That's another one, right? Back
Yeah,
when I used to see it in whatever the early 80s, I'd see Roy Wood and his old get up, and I would
yeah.
just think he's an idiot, right? Like, but now I know he was like super talented, like Jeff Lynne, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but Roy Wood he was the real deal because the way he looked on the telly in 1973, at the height of Wizard's kind of powers, I'd see him I'd see him around Solihull or Birmingham, and he looked exactly like that all the way through the 70s and 80s, because he used to be seen quite a lot. Just he'd be in Smith's buying a magazine or something, and he'd be dressed like that.
Yeah.
His hair was like that. He didn't seem to change at all.
Wow,
But
that's cool. Yeah.
yeah.
What else here?
The other ones I had, I mean, obviously Slade. The tracks I remember the most were Goodbye to Jane, and Take Me Back Home, stuff like that. They just went to number one after number one. I think by the time they got to Squeeze Me, Please Me, my ears were getting a little bit tired of them, I guess, at the time. It's different now. They seem to, and the spelling obviously was great, because I'm at school and I'm slightly dyslexic, so I can't spell. So I thought they were brilliant. Sweet Boring Blitz, that got lots of kind of strange looks from my dad. So that was a definite hit. But I love Sweet. T-Rex, of course, was another band that Mark Bolan. This window of time, because I was going to be whisked away by the grown-up groups in a few years' time, but at this point in time, Mark Bolan and T-Rex being on the top of the pops, it's almost like one of these bands that I'm mentioning will be on. If one was on one week, the other will be on the following week. They seem to be like a continuum, really. 10cc were another band that really translated well to Top of the Pops, going right back to Rubber Bullets through to the bigger hits, perhaps, not in Love and all that. Roxy Music were another band that were
very strange looking back then, like Eno.
Exactly. Bowie,
and
Queen.
those glasses, the fly glasses.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had the bands like the Rubettes and Mud. Yeah.
No.
but there was a kind of like an overlapping Venn diagram of where a lot of these things you weren't, especially from where I was at my age, where no one was telling me, Phil, you can't like that, because that's really uncool. So the fact you've got a band called the Rubettes doing these kind of 50s doo-wop songs, I just thought, well, they were a bit like Mud, doing Tiger Feet or The Cat Crept In. Really, it's such a small period of time how your own taste changed before you think, actually, this is different to Sweet. And then, of course, Status Quo arrived, just wearing denim, and with Caroline and Down Down, and then of course that was opening the doors to Batman Turner Overdrive and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. So there was kind of a rock element coming in, but it was just seen as music, not kind of rock or heavy metal wasn't a phrase really then, or it was just music. It was just what you heard on Radio 1.
And that's what it should be, right? Like,
I
don't like these, categorizing these different bands. It's like, it's just all music, right?
It is. I mean, there was as you know, in Top of the Pops, there was a dance troupe called Pan's People. And they would be picked usually to dance to a track where they couldn't get the act to come on, because there was no videos really back then. There was very, very few videos. And the one performance I remember the most has got nothing to do with him. In fact, I can't remember them at all, but they danced to Frankenstein by the Edgar Winter Group, which of all, and I have to say, for all the discos I might have ever gone to in my life, I've never seen Edgar Winter's Frankenstein being used to get people on the dance floor. But that particular episode, again, the playground the next day. Did you see this track? Heard this track called Frankenstein by the Edgar Winter? It was so weird. It was such an unusual song, and how they must have felt when their choreographer said, "This is the track we're going to dance to."
Yeah. It's actually surprising that the band wouldn't be on that, because they would have been really, same kind of effect, right? With Edgar Winter.
I guess because nearly all the acts that I've mentioned were UK based, so they were obviously able to get to the studio fairly easily, I guess. But whereas things like Edgar Winter Group or Batman Turner Overdrive, they were in Canada or the US, and it was just like, we're going to be on the UK on the telly. Is it worth it? I don't know. But there was I mean, the soul aspect, the Temptations and the OJs and all this kind of, they appeared on Top of the Pops a lot. So yeah, talking about genres, I was very aware that there's pop and there was soul, Marvin Gaye and all that. So there was, when I mentioned in my Sparks review on my own channel, that there was like different corridors at school where you went off at different routes.
Yeah.
And there was like a corridor where everyone was into soul music and R&B, and then there was the kind of pop corridor with the Kinks and the early Who and the
And you
Sparks.
couldn't overlap them.
No,
right?
no. You're kind of all saying what you're into, and this is, I think, where the kind of little silos started to break out. Really,
Yeah.
I think it's probably easier for young people now who probably just find things because an algorithm has stuck it in front of them, that they don't know that it belongs to a specific genre. But as I went into the 70s, I was very aware of where things sat, or what you were kind of almost expected to progress to, really.
Were bands like Uriah Heep and Deep Purple ever on Top of the Pops?
Deep Purple won a couple of times, but it was, I think, 1970, 1971, but I was like 12 or 13, so I missed that. I mean, Black Sabbath were on with Paranoid. It wouldn't be until years when video jukeboxes appeared or YouTube was invented, I started to see those old clips and thought, gosh, I never knew that. There'd be appearances by bands like The Who. I remember seeing them do 515. That would be 1973, and I think they did Relay rather. But bands like Uriah Heep, I think they were on late 70s when David Bowie had left, and they released an album called Firefly, and I think there's a track off that album called Wise Man, and I remember them doing that, which is like a ballad, but everyone talked about that the next day, but it wasn't in necessarily positive ways. It was like, because that was like punk had arrived, and bands like Uriah Heep and Yes, and they were seen as dinosaurs, really, although obviously they were still in their 20s.
Yeah.
So they weren't.
And speaking of, genres like punk music, like that Sex Pistols album, I don't even consider that punk. It's just a really good rock album.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know.
It is. But at the time, the way it was positioned and the way that I mentioned earlier, how all these music newspapers were so, I could just flit from one to the other. It didn't really matter which one I bought. But from 1977 or late 76, the New Musical Express became the enemy, because it seemed to drop everything that had got it there. Led Zeppelin, everything were old dinosaurs, and it just went straight into the punk route, really. But what's interesting is that quite a few of these bands that I've mentioned on this period of Top of the Pops, which was the most influential moment for me, didn't manage to convert or move forwards through that decade and carry on. I mean, T-Rex certainly didn't. Mark Bolan started to realize the world was changing. He couldn't quite change to go with it.
Yeah, he kept repeating himself, really, right? Or
he did, and it worked really well. Slade did the same, and it worked really well. And they went to America thinking it would work, and Slade didn't. They had a period just after the mid 70s where it all started to unravel.
And then, sorry to interrupt, but was it their drummer that got in?
Yes, he was in a really bad car accident where he lost his memory. So obviously things were very, very difficult for them. The Hoople obviously all unraveled as well. 10cc, they did. Roxy Music also changed. Queen took off. So they don't count. Mud Under the Ribettes disappeared. Oh, and the other one, I guess we have to remember, I forgot all about her because it's all been blokes. Susie Quattro.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. You interviewed her.
Yeah. Susie Quattro was obviously huge at this period with Can the Can and Devilgate Drive, and so she was massive.
And did you get the TV show Happy Days in the UK?
We did.
Oh, you did. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, we didn't get it until much later, but yeah, we did. Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's on that, isn't she?
Yeah.
And Status Quo continued, but they changed once they released Rockin' All Over the World. They went from wearing denim to wearing posher shirts. So that kind of
Yeah.
and the other person that carried on and didn't stop was Jeff Lynne with ELO.
Yeah. Yeah.
He managed to do it, and of course, I spoke. Well, we'll talk about this another, and the next thing we work on together with is Sparks,
Yeah.
because they carried on, but again
Well,
changed.
they done okay.
They did all right.
You know, it took a while, right? But yeah.
It did.
Uh,
Yeah. So top of the pops for me represents a time when there was no other way of seeing the music that I was falling in love with on the radio. There was no other way of seeing it unless it appeared on Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
The Old Grey Whistle Test was an album orientated show that wouldn't have had these kind of acts on. And pop music was changing really quickly. I can also remember the Rolling Stones were a very old band then. That was something that the big kids at school listened to. But I do remember seeing It's Only Rock and Roll with them in that room where all the soap suds come in.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
You know, and see, I remember that to
Yeah.
this day. And
Yeah.
again, we all talked about it in the playground, 1974.
Yeah.
So there were major bands like that, and Rod Stewart and the Faces. I can remember "Stay with Me," you know, and stuff like that really well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else I can think of, but it was stuff because I didn't have enough money to buy albums. So Top of the Pops and recording things.
Or see the bands.
Seeing the
live.
band, I couldn't see the bands. Now I
Yeah.
wasn't old enough to go out. So Top of the Pops was most important to me in my formative years. So once it reaches the end of towards the end of the 70s, there's other ways of seeing and hearing things, and I'm going out more. So I kind of, someone might say, oh, you know, did you see Boy George on the Top of the Pops last night? And I go, who's, you know, no, but there was a way of seeing that. So it's, I think, or Tubeway Army and you know, Cars, things like certain iconic things that popped up along the way. But at Top of the Pops stopped being such an important thing to get home for or to stay in for, to me, from probably the late 70s, from that point on, which is how it started to fragment really because of the other options. But yeah, Bad Company doing Can't Get Enough, I remember that on Top of the Pops, but it was quite unusual to see a kind of serious rock band, you know, it's jeans and cheesecloth shirts and stuff. It was more kind of glamorous if you're on Top of the Pops, really.
And what about sensational Alex Harvey band? They were on.
They were on Top of the Pops because they did Boston Tea Party is one I remember. But the Alex Harvey thing really comes from the Old Grey Whistle Test, because that was they did the Faith Healer and the track Next, and the Old Grey Whistle Test was usually had like these, you know, be Floyd tracks or, you know, Yes or something, and Alex Harvey were like nothing you'd ever seen. In fact, I mean, while we're here, and because I'm climbing over the barriers to becoming a Sparks fan, the more I've listened to Sparks, and I already am a big Alex Harvey fan. Is there a similarity between the kind of? It just seems like there isn't something to do with the.
There is something there for sure.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah, because I became a fan of him when I bought. You know, back in the 70s, you couldn't hear the album; you had to buy it, right?
Yeah.
Buying it, right?
Yeah.
And I bought The Impossible Dream because I love the cover, and I might have read something in the magazine, but that can't. Just from reading in a magazine, you can't tell if you're going to like the music or not.
No, you can't.
But I bought the album, and I love the humor, and of course, Zal Clemenson. I think he's one of the most underrated guitarists ever. And you know, he's in his clown makeup. So yeah, the visual and the music. There's a bit of a similarity with them. Yeah.
Because all the people we've mentioned, whether it's Alex Harvey or Sparks or Roxy Music, T-Rex, there was a kind of mystery behind these characters.
Yeah.
like you mentioned, Roxy Music and Phil Manzera with these
Yeah,
fly glasses. There was
yeah,
something. Each of these acts, Roy Wood, each
yeah.
of them had a something about the personality or someone in the band that you wouldn't meet in your supermarket. That was he who would
You
look.
wouldn't want to meet them.
Yeah, yeah, no, David Bowie, coming from outer
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
All of these bands were characters or had some. I mean, Sparks.
yeah,
I mean, something quite theatrical about them that went beyond them just
yeah.
playing. This is our new song. I hope you like it.
Yeah, and the contrast between the singer and the keyboardist, right? And then later finding out they're brothers, and they're so different, right?
Yeah, totally. But yeah, Zal Kellenson had a kind of because he did that. He was dressed as a clown. He did that
He was
mime,
so funny. Yeah,
very funny. But yeah, that's probably where the Ron Mael thing,
yeah,
the kind of blank face, isn't it? There's
yeah,
something quite, you
yeah.
know, interesting.
Almost scary.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah. And
uh,
ELO, they were again. They became more kind of not serious, but traditional, stadium band. But on top of the pops, when they're doing things like Roll Over Beethoven and the way
yeah.
that they're dressed, they're again wacky.
That's what I remember. The first time I saw them on TV here was doing Roll Over Beethoven, and they're just going crazy at the end, right? They're laying
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
floor with
yeah,
the
yeah. Yeah, I
floor.
remember that. See,
Yeah,
I remember that to
yeah,
this day.
yeah,
Isn't it? It's amazing, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so is Top of the Pops still like our reruns shown in the UK?
Yeah, they do rerun. I think a lot of the tapes got taped over, so there's
Yeah,
tons of stuff that's missing. And so sometimes I think there's a German show called the was it Beat something? I can't remember.
Beat Club.
That's it, Beat Club,
Yeah,
where there's more probably clips of Survive from there than they have Top of the Pops. But yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot missing. But it is interesting when you asked me about this. When I sat down and thought, what are the most memorable performances? I could remember so many of these of the acts that I've mentioned. And what was also interesting, Larry, was that because obviously, if someone sits me down and says, "What are your favourite bands?" I'll reel off the usual purples and everything.
yeah, yeah,
But when doing this exercise and making my, the top 10 list, they were all like, Slade, Sweet, Mott, T
yeah,
Rex, Quo, 10cc. They're all pop based acts.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Wow. Okay, so I think is there anything else?
Um, I I guess it's something that it's of its time. It could have only existed when it did, and it
Yeah,
was a vehicle for people as a window into the pop, essentially the explosion of pop music coming out of the 70s in the UK. I think there's a lot of these bands didn't translate to the rest of the world. I mean, there's so many of them. There's Chicory Tip,
yeah.
Lieutenant Pigeon.
Well, even Slade didn't really.
No, they
I
didn't.
don't know why, really, because the music was.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure that when they did go to America, that Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons were sitting in the audience thinking,
Yeah,
we could do some of that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
and because there's so much similarities between, there are aspects of Kiss that is very kind of simple, almost glam pop,
yeah,
especially in their early
yeah,
tracks, really.
yeah,
I think that it captured a moment and it brought everyone together.
yeah,
So there'd be like young people all sitting down on a Thursday at 7 o'clock to watch Top of the Pops. And, there'd be loads of parents worried about their kids, what they were going to spend their pocket money on or what they looks as like they were getting into.
yeah,
And I think it was something that everyone talked about at school. And it was something that everyone just talked about. Music was, I'm not saying music isn't important now because obviously it is, it's everywhere.
mm,
But music then there was not many things competing for your attention then.
yeah,
Music was, the fact there were so many newspapers, and of course it wasn't just music newspapers, there were music magazines, there was Fab 208, there was, Smash Hits, and
yeah, yeah,
there were so many things that, people who just wanted to know more about the artist. There were more fan clubs. I've got some of the Top of the Pops kind of annuals and stuff, and people were interested in the artists, like Bay City Rollers, like what star sign were they, what was their favorite color,
Yeah.
the Osmonds.
Yeah.
See, the Osmonds was a tricky one because my sister really liked Donny. And so I had all Donny Osmond's albums, and I obviously had to. This was not something that was cool, but Crazy Horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First time I heard that, it's Led Zeppelin's got a new song out.
Yeah.
And they were definitely talented, right?
They were, yeah.
Maybe you can laugh at them at the time, being
Yeah.
a boy band or whatever, but they were all very talented.
Yeah, Crazy Horses. I remember seeing that on Top of the Pops with Donny doing his
Did
thing.
you buy the 45?
Yeah, on MGM Records. Yeah. I thought that was superb.
Yeah.
So there were so many things, so many tracks.
That actually would be somebody good to interview on your channel, is Donny Osmond.
Really, Donny? Yeah.
I'm serious. Have you ever thought of that? Or?
I haven't.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, my sister would be impressed. Yeah, I'll think about that. Yeah.
And now back to your channel. Now Spinning Magazine. You've interviewed quite a few. Tony Banks from Genesis, Steve Hackett, Ian Anderson, Steve Howe.
I've been really lucky.
Interviewing me now.
Well, this is the
highlight.
This is the pinnacle, Larry, obviously.
Where do you go from there?
Exactly. Which is why I'm going to invite you onto my channel, because it's the only way to go. It's the only place to go next, isn't it? And you've met Spark.
But the question is, why did I have to pay you? No, but being serious now, who would you? I guess Ian Gillan. You haven't interviewed him yet.
No.
But are there certain artists you're trying to interview?
There's a few, but when I first started, there were kind of people I thought, oh, I'd love to interview this person or that person, and I'm quite more mellow about it now, because I feel that I've got quite a few interviews under my belt now, and I see it as like it's probably going to be, it's quite an important archive of people I've spoken to, and they've told stories, and I do seem to have a knack of people telling me things they haven't told anyone else, and I think it's probably because my approach hopefully is that I'm just simply a fan of the music, and they feel comfortable and more relaxed. I mean, Steve Hackett I've interviewed 5 times now, and someone said in a comment it's like he's become one of your co-hosts, which is very kind, but he obviously, and each time I've spoken to him he's said more, but it's like I try and see it as whoever they are, it's just 2 people sitting down in a coffee shop having a cup of coffee or a beer and having a chat about music. I don't try and do anything controversial. I do feel it's important to talk about what they're doing now, and not just go, do you remember in 1971? Because they must be sick of that. So I do manage to talk about the classic times, but I also think you've got to show respect to what someone's doing.
And you're also promoting whatever new thing they have out, right? You're kind of focusing on that too. So I have seen some interviews. Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. He's got a YouTube channel, and it's good. But I noticed early on when he would interview other musicians, he would kind of make it sometimes he would talk about himself, or interrupt. But he is getting better with that, which is good. But there's other interviewers I won't mention. It's like they're interviewing somebody, but they're making it more about themselves than the person they're supposed to be interviewing, right?
I mean, sometimes I don't get that right, and I might find myself because I'm usually on quite a strict time. So I don't want to move someone on quickly, and I don't want to.
No, I wasn't implying you, Phil.
but I do sometimes realize that you've got to try and steer the conversation sometimes, especially if it becomes, I've had a couple of people where it's become a bit political.
Yeah.
And this might not And I think this isn't going to age well.
Yeah, I just
So
don't say anything. I let him say what he wants, and I move on.
yeah, so I do try and steer them away from that, really.
Yeah.
You know, about the music and stuff.
So you don't want me to bring up politics when you interview me?
Well, Larry, with Sparks lyrics, this could go anywhere. So
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it will do whatever it does. That's fine.
So anyway, thank you very much, Phil. This was 36 minutes. That's not too bad.
That's okay.
So we can have a little break before you interview me.
Yes, that's right.
Have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Phil.
You're welcome.
I'll have a link for your channel below in the pinned comment. You're just one of my favorite channels, especially for interviews. And one final question. Before an interview, or maybe it just depends on who you're talking to, do you get super nervous, or are you calm?
No. I find I spend quite a bit of time doing, obviously, researching, listening to things, getting myself in the zone and stuff, and coming up with my questions and everything, and I'm okay. And then literally when, let's say, the interview is going to be on the hour, I've opened up the Zoom thing and there's 5 minutes to go, and all of a sudden, all of a sudden it starts to,
and then Ian Anderson pops up.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is people, they tend to turn up right on the time.
Yeah, so you're worried that they're not going to show up, right? And then
exactly. So you think they're not going to turn up, and all of a sudden the little box appears and it says Ian Anderson. Yeah, and you go, oh my God. So so yeah, I get super nervous for the first few seconds, and so
that's pretty normal, though.
Yeah, so I have to really be controlled on my introduction, so I don't say it at 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, remember to breathe.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much, Phil. That was fun. Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, I'll see you very, very soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.